Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am back for part 3, I think this makes it, of working on this old world style paint finish for this desk and my 3rd live stream ever on YouTube. Pretty excited. Let's see here. I am still working on trying to get the right angle and lighting with my laptop though, so just bear with me. I think that's pretty good right there. All right, so tonight I am going to be adding a black wax to this. So what this is going to do is it is going to help to darken and add more depth to this paint finish. I want it to really look old and authentically old. And so this is going to be a good way to do it. So what I'm using is the Paint Pixie. This is the French tip brush. Any sort of a pointed tip brush would work. And then I also have Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in black. So I have this that I will be working with. It is a water-based wax. So I'm able to do this before I clear coat this piece. That's always my last step. And that's why I also prefer the Dixie Belle Wax, because most waxes are oil-based and you cannot clear coat over them. The oil-based products have to be kind of like your last step. So if I have any areas, since this is very raw, porous paint, if I have any areas that I get this, it's going to want to sink in instantly to that paint, like absorb into it. And if I get it somewhere that I don't want it, I do have clear wax on hand, just in case, with another French tip brush, just in case, to kind of act as an eraser for it. So that guy will be on standby, but for the most part, we should be able to get away with just the black wax. So I am going to just get it right on the tip of the bristles, and I'm going to start towards the bottom and work my way up, because the bottom is naturally going to be darker. And then the only areas that I'll add it up at the top, I think, is I will pull it up on this trim piece. But other than that, I don't think I'm going to add it to the center area. But I'll have to play it by ear, because it is one of those things, painting furniture, redoing furniture, any type of art in general, it's kind of, you got to play it by ear. You got to feel what the piece needs and go with whatever it's turning out like. You kind of have to adjust your plans accordingly, because if you go in with a solid game plan, a lot of the time it will change. You can also apply this with a rag if you would like, but my wrists get really sore when I paint a lot, or if I'm waxing a lot, because the wax is a thicker product, and so it does take a little bit more elbow grease, especially like you have to apply it, you have to really rub it in, and then when you go to remove it, kind of buff it out like you would with a wax, and it can be very tiring on my wrist. And so using a brush helps to eliminate some of that, I don't know if I would say pressure on my wrist, but just the exhaustion that my wrist gets from using a rag and trying to get it into all the details of brush is just so much easier. Now, this is not going to be as dark and quite as trying to think of how to explain this. So gilding wax is going to have a lot darker, richer coverage than this water-based wax is. So you can see it's going on, and it's not super dark. I mean, it is dark, but it's almost like a really dark charcoal gray, I would say, is what it kind of looks like. So if I add this and then I decide that it's not quite dark enough for me, then I can always, after I clear coat it, I can take a black gilding wax and go back over, because gilding wax is going to be an oil-based product. And that is going to give me the better, deeper, darker coverage. So I have to do this whole entire desk, all of the sides. And then I still have not started on the top. That's actually the only part that isn't technically done to the point that I can begin waxing and doing my clear coating process, because I still have not quite decided on what I want that to look like. I think I'm going to pull this up here lightly, and then I'm going to probably add a little bit of clear wax to blend that out a little bit, soften it. But naturally you would have a shadow in that area, so that's what I'm trying to mimic. Now this totally could have been done like left as is with the before look, but I usually don't go extremely dramatic on pieces like this. I usually stick with a pretty neutral color palette. I would still say this is fairly neutral. It isn't like extremely wild like orange and purple and everything like that, but I do tend to lean more towards like the gray and beige and tan tones. When I do colorful pieces, it does tend to lean towards the blue color palette, because I feel like those can be considered neutral. Blues and greens are fairly neutral when it comes to colors. And so since I decided that I'm going just over the top on this piece, I'm going to go for it. All right, let me add a little bit more down here, and then I'm going to start bringing in the clear wax and using it almost as an eraser or to smooth out some of these areas. I don't want to pull it back completely, but I do want to smooth it out so it's not a really harsh line. I don't know why the lighting keeps doing that where it's like going in and out. I'm on my laptop. I'm forced to be on my laptop until I hit 1,000 subscribers, so it may be something going on with the webcam. Not quite sure. So I'm going to go ahead and seal my black wax and set it out of the way, because if I have two waxes open, a lot of the time I will be dipping and not paying attention, and then I go in the center or somewhere else where I don't want black wax and realize that I accidentally dipped into the wrong container. So this is the clear wax, and it does look white in the container. Don't be alarmed. It does go on clear and it dries clear. It may be slightly of like a whitish color when you first begin to apply it, but it will come out clear in the end. And I just have a microfiber rag, which is going to be my buffing back rag. And that is going to allow me to buff all of this out without getting a bunch of lint coming off of like a t-shirt rag. I'm going to take this and swipe it back a little bit. Again, it's going to help me pull that shadowing that I added back, but it's not going to remove it completely. And I don't want to remove it completely, but I do want to blend it back so it's not so heavy. So see how that allowed me to soften that up so much more? And then I'm also going to do the same as I pull it down. I'm just going to go right along that line. Now, typically when you would think of waxing a piece, you would think of having a big, chunky, round brush to do so. But the reason why I'm using smaller brushes is because I'm using my wax as a decorative accent. It is not being used as my final coat, my final top coat. So I'm not technically trying to apply this all over the entire piece. I'm just using it to further the shadowing around the edges and around the bottom. All right, let's begin to wipe this back. And we're going to be left with a really, really awesome shadowing. Go all the way along the edges now, the same rag, and start wiping back all the black wax, kind of buffing it out a little bit. You can layer it up if you want to, but it is important to also wipe it back, especially when you're applying it with a brush. I feel like you tend to apply it a little bit heavier than when you're doing it with just the rag. And for it to properly dry, you want to make sure to remove any of the excess and allow it to breathe and dry without being globbed and globbed and globbed of all this thick layer of wax. What I like to do is I will, when I'm doing something like this where I'm using it as a decorative finish and accenting the piece, I will wipe it back almost immediately when I'm done with a section. And then I will allow it usually a minimum of about 2 hours Technically, you don't have to fully wait that long, but I like to give it a good while to soak in, and then I'll come back one more time and I'll start to wipe it and buff it out again. And then I let that sit for a minimum of 2 to 3 days, depending on how dry, how like humid the weather's been. And then I will clear coat it. And I just spray a clear coat. If you're brushing a clear coat on, you're gonna have to brush it really, really lightly on that first coat to make sure that you don't pull back any of the wax, because it is going to want to most likely reactivate it. But I always spray all my clear coats, so I don't really have much experience of what happens when you full on brush it, or full on brush a clear coat over it. Because spraying a clear coat is going to not affect any of the finish that's underneath. It just lays a light blanket of clear coat over it. All right. I feel like that is pretty good. I am going to pull you guys back real fast so that you can see the difference between the two sides. Now keep in mind, this finish is a very uneven, imperfect finish because it's supposed to look like weathered old, like an old door or something with patina and paint and layers of all these different mints and blue tones. And so it's going to naturally be uneven all over. So this is what it looked like before, very light. And then that's what it looks like after that first coat. I may end up bringing in a little bit of brown because the black is a little bit harsh, I feel like. And if I bring in a little bit of brown, I think it might warm it up and make it look a little bit more like wood. But I could use brown wax, I could use gray wax if I wanted to. If I feel like it's just too dark when I get this whole thing done, what I can do is I can actually, I can take a white wax even, and I can go through and soften everything with a white wax and bring everything back to a nice light, soft look. But I'm thinking I want it pretty moody, so we'll see. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'll do the center part real fast with you guys, and then I will let you go for the evening. Let's try to get that kind of centered. Now also, if you're using this Dixie Belle Wax and you just absolutely hate how it's looking, you can 100% paint over it as long as it's dried and you've wiped it back really well and allowed it proper time to dry. You can paint back over it and it won't affect your paint finish because it is water-based. I've had pieces before that I applied the wax and then I changed my mind and I've painted back over. And then I've sealed them. They've gone home with clients and never had any issues or complaints. And then we're going to go back in with the clear wax, soften that all back up. I appreciate you 4 people who are here. It's definitely not quite the reach that I have over on my Facebook page, but I do quite like this platform so far. somewhat clean area on my cloth. Because this area is towards the top and I'm trying to keep the top area a little bit lighter, I want to make sure to follow suit with this and not go too heavy and dramatic on the shadowing. Okay, I feel like that is probably good. I feel like that's probably good, just like that. I don't want to go too heavy. I could probably even remove a little bit more down there and up in here. Maybe a little bit more in here. A little bit more back to the areas that I just rubbed off, because I still want it on the very, very edges. I just don't want it so much in the middle, but I do want still a little something there. I want it to be still slightly shadowed. It really helps the molding to really pop and stand out versus getting lost in the piece. And so this is what I'm going to do for this whole entire piece, the insides, the two sides, and then the very front of it as well. So it's going to be quite a long process, but I am loving how this is turning out so far. I hope this helps you guys if you maybe don't have so much experience with wax or what waxes to use. This is the brand that I would recommend, even though it is a little bit thicker. It's a little bit, it takes a little bit more to apply and to rub back, because oil-based products are going to be a little bit thinner and go on a little bit smoother. But this allows you to, if you make a mistake, you can absolutely paint over it, cover it up, erase it with some clear wax, or at least smooth it out a little bit. And so that's what I would recommend, the Dixie Belle waxes. And I will make sure once I get off of here, I'll post in the description my affiliate link if anybody is interested in purchasing. If not, no worries. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to always comment and let me know your questions. I would love to answer them. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, all of the platforms basically that you can find me. But I appreciate you guys. If you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you could give me a subscribe so that we can hopefully eventually get off of the laptop and onto a better camera. But have a wonderful night, you guys.